My art practice draws inspiration from the grounding and uplifting effects of yoga, exploring how these sensations can be expressed through art. In particular, I focus on the feeling of empowerment created when intuitively moving the female body. I am influenced by my experiences as a yoga teacher and draw on my efforts to help women embrace their bodies through mindful movement. This year, a significant amount of my research has developed from community art projects. Throughout this project, I have used art therapy to help my mental well-being. Here are some pages from my art journal where I draw freely without specific instructions, allowing me to express my thoughts and emotions spontaneously. I'm particularly interested in how specific colours and marks can represent feelings, which I can incorporate into my artwork. In 2024, I have led 2 community art projects, Create and Empower. In both of these, I worked with groups of 10 to 30 women from the local community. I guided them through a strong, expressive and empowering yoga sequence before exploring the emotional significance of colours and shapes and how these could be used to express the feelings experienced in a yoga class. This group project created interesting research materials. I was inspired to use a warm colour palette of pinks, oranges and yellows and compose my paintings in a fluid and expansive layout. A key element of my practice involves exploring the interconnections among women practicing yoga together. In my Empower workshop, I guided the women to work together to create collaborative artworks that express their feelings of empowerment when practicing yoga. This influenced me to arrange limbs harmoniously and use expressive mark making around the bodies to imply energy and movement in my paintings. I translated the colour, mark and feeling associations into my sketchbook for me to come back to throughout my painting. I've been fascinated by the contrasting emotions that can be conveyed through colours, leading me to create Feeling Blue, which uses the words associated with different colours. Each word connects, demonstrating that emotions felt triggered by a colour can morph and change, similar to how a viewer's emotive response to an artwork can evolve. Painting. I begin each of my paintings by creating a movement map that guides the composition of the limbs and brushstrokes. This technique subtly allows me to maintain a sense of harmony in the artwork and use emotive patterns taken from my community project findings. Inspired by the idea of women losing concerns about their body image as they move in a yoga class, I created flow to represent this flow state. I limited the viewer's ability to see a whole body, included limbs at various angles, and used sweeping brushstrokes to suggest the practitioner's lack of concern for body image as they move. The inclusion of multiple figures also symbolises the empowering sense of unity amongst women as they move together. To explore new avenues, I created Flow State, a performance artwork of myself getting lost in an intuitive yoga flow state whilst listening to my yoga playlist and leaving remnants of my movement in the form of paint on a board. The impressions created revealed an image of movement and a perspective of where a yoga mat was most worn. The image could be interpreted as a heat map, which inspired me to bring blue into my paintings to create a heat camera palette. Heat aligns with the warm room used in yoga classes and the heat created internally when moving the body. I used flow state impression to create both a movement map and heat map that would inspire the composition and palette of motion. The heat camera blue adds depth to motion, creating a powerful image. The concentration of darker colours in the centre draws the viewer into the painting and the experience of movement. As I have progressed, my representation of limbs have become more bold and confident. Loosening. Throughout this project, I've been in the pursuit of loosening my depiction of the female body. My first artworks were tight and over-representative. I realised that because I lacked confidence in my ability to paint the human figure, I was obsessed with proving anatomical accuracy, which got in the way of the major aims of my practice. I set myself a series of challenges with different parameters to loosen my representation. I went to a yoga life drawing class where I was limited to only 1 to 10 minutes to create an impression of the figure. I recreated flow in a 5-minute acrylic sketch, a 10-minute oil pastel sketch, limiting myself to 16 brush strokes, and then only 6. These exercises have pushed me to learn that human movement can be applied without figure, and that often an artwork can be more emotive without a perfectly observed human figure represented. Monotypes and light boxes. I wrote my dissertation on Edgar Degas' dark field monotypes of nude women who are thought to be prostitutes. I arranged a private viewing of these prints at the Louvre, where I was able to see them up close. In many of the monotypes you could see Degas' fingerprints. I was particularly taken by the artist's touch and the impression the artist's skin contact had on the artworks. It is important to note the contrast between Degas, a man argued to be misogynistic, rendering the female body with his fingers, and myself. Through depicting the female body in a powerful poses, my work reclaims the female body from patriarchal histories, situating my work amongst feminist artists and art historians such as Judy Chicago, Norma Browder, and Rosemary Betterton. Studying Degas' monotypes led me to create impulsive images of women in expressive poses. These prints also represented the flow state and interconnectedness of women, as discussed in my previous paintings. When reflecting back on the work, I analysed that I preferred the effect of the print on the acrylic with a light glowing through over the traditional monotype on paper. I decided to create a light box using these acrylic sheets as panels. I used a laser cutter and plastic weld to create a smooth finish. I placed a wireless light within them and was pleased with the glowing, enticing and calming effect when placed in a dark room. I experimented with different sizes, patterns and figures on the boxes. Here are 2 subtle impressions of my body doing yoga poses within the boxes. Standing embrace and kneeling embrace represent the grounding feelings of doing a forward fold and child's pose. Heat nods to the heat map inspired by flow state impression. Overall, the light boxes have the potential to have both a soothing and energizing effect on the viewer. Sensory immersion. As I began to focus on how the viewer would interact with my work, I observed the link between yoga studios, disability sensory environments, and immersive artworks. Each used senses to immerse the person into the present moment. My first installation included my Unity light box, placed in a dark room with a yoga mat, relaxing scent, and audio of me teaching a yoga class. I then displayed the light box in a dark room alongside my lit painting, 2 yoga mats, and led an interactive performance where I guided the audience to breathe in an invigorating and energizing way. I later analysed that these installations were too similar to a yoga class, and so started exploring more subtle visual explorations of yoga for my installations. I developed my own scent for the artwork. I wanted the aroma to have both grounding and uplifting effects on the viewer. I explored different combinations and settled on lavender, eucalyptus, orange and clove. The lavender and clove have relaxing and comforting properties, and the eucalyptus and orange are more invigorating and energizing. Overall, they harmonize well together. As I moved away from my yoga teaching recording, I went to multiple sound baths that use the sound waves from bowls to relax the body, and I also attended Hannah Talicki's sound workshop. These inspired me to create a deeply layered soundscape that uses sound vibrations to stimulate the viewer's nervous system into rest and relaxation. I then translated the colour, marks and words from the community art projects into 4-note sound vibrations. I recorded myself humming these arrangements and layered them into a soundscape. I was pleased with the soothing atmosphere of the soundscape that I created. Although it isn't as energetic as some of my other works, taking the time to relax to the sound can create an energizing after effect. Throughout this project, I've experimented with using AI to animate my artworks. I created Touch, a performance artwork that projected an animated monotype onto my body as I intuitively moved in a yoga flow state. I was interested in the viewer having the opportunity to be immersed into the artwork as the piece could project onto them. When I came across Nick Tom's monolith, I was inspired to project my artwork onto a tall cuboid, as the size of the structure had the potential to increase the viewer's awareness of their own body. By tapping into the viewer's sense of physicality, the artwork could draw their senses more into the present moment. I'm currently working on an installation called Feeling that combines my light boxes and a projection of my paintings' flow and motion, which I've animated, onto the 8-foot monolith. My grounding and energizing scent will be diffused as you enter into the room, and the humming soundscape will be played. I hope this installation stimulates the viewer's senses, immersing them wholeheartedly in an artwork that is both relaxing and uplifting, whilst conveying a dynamic sense of movement.